Dear Mother, welcome to Sanamama, a space to honour the unspoken truths of mothering, where birth and death, joy and heartbreak intertwine. Here we hold space for the stories we don't always share, beyond the polished ideals and into the raw and real, through the tender spaces of loss, life, and everything in between. For the mothers who carry their children in their arms, and for those who carry them in their hearts, Sanamama is a place to explore the infinite ways mothering shapes and reshapes us. May we grieve, connect, and celebrate together, to embrace the messy, beautiful truth of this journey, and to remind one another that none of it has to be carried alone. This is Sanamama, a letter to all mothers. Hi everyone, welcome to the Sanamama podcast. Today I am joined by Sia in Italy, and she will be sharing her story of motherhood and loss with us. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe, as it will help us raise awareness to this very important topic. Thank you so much for coming, Sia.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So you're in Italy right now. Is this where you were born?
This is where I'm born, yes. I am in Genova. I recently came back and I'm going to stay here until the end of the month.
Yeah. And I connected with you years ago, but at the time you were living in Thailand. Are you still living in Thailand, or have you relocated?
I am still living in Thailand.
Okay.
It's been 7 years now, which is wild. Yeah, I'm going to head back probably around the mid-May. So just taking a little break during the low season to visit family, check in with the growth. Coming home is always kind of like the testament to how much we've grown. So in that phase right now.
Amazing. And I would love to hear about your journey into motherhood and science and all of the things that have led you to be in Thailand. And yeah, I'm aware that when you fell pregnant, you were living in Thailand. So I'd love to know about your story.
Yes. So I moved to Thailand 7 years ago, back in 2018, to pursue my PhD in tropical medicine. And I spent the first couple of years working in faculty at at one of the university hospitals in Northeast Thailand. And then just before COVID hit, I had reached a place of complete burnout, and I had this nudge that told me, like, you have to leave. And so I sat with it for a while, and then around mid-January 2020, I left faculty and I relocated to the mountains in northern Thailand on the other side. And this was a really good intuitive spark, because life would be probably very different and would have evolved very differently if I had stayed in faculty. I did continue my PhD, but out of faculty. And this is the mountains of northern Thailand. I've been living since then in a village called Pai, really beautiful little village in the valley, close to the Burmese border, not so far from the Burmese border. And this is where I met my ex-partner, who was also the father of my beautiful daughter, Naomi. And it was COVID times, so it was a bit of a hectic time. And when things started reopening a little bit, I relocated for a little while to just take a break and get a kind of shift in perspective, some fresh air, to the south of Thailand, on an island called Koh Phangan. And this is where my journey with pregnancy started. This is where I became pregnant. And yeah, it was almost like a dream come true to be on an island, you know, and just live this really slow life. The island was beautiful because indeed COVID, and there was very little people, which is really nice. Quite a rare opportunity in an island that is otherwise always really overwhelmed by tourism. And so, yeah, and I feel like I became pregnant somewhere in March 2021, and it was unexpected.
Yeah.
It was very unexpected. It was quite early in my relationship, and the relationship was experiencing some turbulence during that time. So finding out that I was pregnant came as a big surprise. And I actually had a previous pregnancy when I was 21 years old, and I used to live in London. I was doing my bachelor's in biochemistry at that time. And at that time, it was very clear that it was just not the right time. My partner at the time had just received a job offer for the United Nations in Cambodia. And so it was really like, okay, this is not happening right now. And so that time I decided to terminate my pregnancy very early. I had like an abortion. I did an abortion, and it was maybe my first experience into motherhood. And while the decision was quite straightforward, the grieving process took a really long time. And at that time, I promised myself that if this was ever going to happen again, I would have kept the baby because I was not willing to go through that again. And so yeah, when I became pregnant again in 2021, I knew what I wanted, even though the circumstances were not quite, you know, ideal. I knew that she came for a reason, and my decision was very, very firm. I was in an open relationship at that time, which has caused a lot of turbulence. Um, my partner's priorities were kind of different to mine, and this kind of put me in a bit of a stressful place. The first trimester was really intense. I experienced a lot of morning sickness, a lot of migraines, and I was really blessed in a way that I was living this slow island life. I was studying for my PhD at the same time, so I was like trying to balance it. But it was very, very healing to be by the waters and to be able to kind of frame my days according to my womb and to the baby that was growing within me. I had my first ultrasound on the 5th of April, 2021. And this is where things started to get a little bit edgy, I would say. They take this measurement, I believe it's called nuchal translucency. It's like measurement of back of the head of the baby. And
You know how many weeks you were when you got?
when I did this, I think I was about 5 weeks. So it was
Yeah.
pretty early. Um, but basically on Kopangan, I'm not sure if things have changed like right now, but at that time, there was no gynecologist. There was no maternity kind of services. And so I had to travel to Koh Samui, a neighboring island. And I went to this specialized clinic that's, you know, they take care of pregnant mamas. And I was expecting maybe some sort of professionalism in this place. And when the doctor took this measurement, she just looked at me with a bit of a worried face, and in a very fast manner, she kind of dismissed me because the appointment was over, saying like, oh, there might be something seriously wrong with your child. But, you know, you'll have to wait. And then she just kind of kicked me out. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you cannot deliver an information like that and take no time to actually give me an explanation. So that really stressed me out. And I went back to Kopangan, and after a few days, I couldn't really sit with this information. And I have a medical background, and I could have been able, to understand. And I also understand that this is not the way to talk to a patient, or, So I went back to Koh Samui, but to a different hospital, just a general Bangkok hospital. It's a private hospital that is everywhere in Thailand, to do another ultrasound. And during this ultrasound, the measurement they took was lower compared to the one that was taken during the previous ultrasound. And the doctor reassured me that, I was healthy. I was 25 years old, and there was no risk factors, apparent risk factors at least. And he kind of reassured me that everything was going to be fine. And he did advise me that if I wanted, I could take like a prenatal test, like a non-invasive chromosomal test at 10 weeks, just to give me more peace of mind. So I went back, and I was like, okay, everything is going to be fine. I felt like a really strong connection to the baby very early on. And I felt like she was really guiding me and regulating my nervous system when I couldn't do that. At 10 weeks, I went back to do the chromosomal testing, and they sent me the results back really quickly. And there was no sign, of any chromosomal abnormalities. Everything looked absolutely fine. They also told me the sex of the baby. I knew it was going to be a girl, which I was super excited about. And there was only one value in this test. It's called the NICE, or NICE. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. There was one value that was above the normal range, and this was the fetal fraction. And I remember emailing the the clinic and being like, "Hey, what does this mean?" And then they never replied to me, which I thought was a little bit okay. But when I looked on the internet, it's like, okay, an above average fetal fraction may mean that your baby might be born with might be born a little bit smaller, or may have like low birth weight. And I was like, okay, that's fine, I'm sure she's gonna be fine. And in retrospective, if this abnormal value, I really wonder what happened there, because a higher value meant like low birth weight. Okay, if the value would have been lower than the normal range, this could have indicated what actually happened to her. So I don't know what went wrong with that test, or if it was just like a sensitivity problem, or who knows. But yeah, receiving this really positive test results, like positive in the meaning that there was nothing wrong, kind of gave me a lot of peace of mind. And shortly after, I left the island to go back to Chiang Mai, which is in the north of Thailand. I really wanted to finish all of my lab work for my PhD before the baby was coming. I was like, I can potentially write the thesis, after giving birth, but I can definitely not be in the lab after giving birth. So I moved up to Chiang Mai, was working with the Faculty of Agriculture and the Faculty of Medicine back in Eastern Thailand there. We were researching how pesticides affect soil health and human health. I moved back to the north alone, because again, like, my partner's priorities were different from mine, and the whole open relating was kind of difficult for me. I did not want to relate openly to anyone, to be honest. And this created a kind of new wave of stress, because I was up in the north, working in the lab all day long, and felt really lonely. And I kind of also had this kind of old maiden wounds that were coming back to the surface, asking to be really embraced and acknowledged to move forward into the, I was kind of being initiated, into the mother archetype and into the motherhood. And being alone during this time was really, really challenging. Also, being in Thailand, all my family was, back in Europe, back in Italy. So that I missed their support. I missed their warmth a lot. My close sisters were in the mountains, but so I was kind of like in this in-between state where all the people who I loved were far away. And I think this had like a pretty big toll on my nervous system. It was a very challenging time. And one of the lessons that came out of that was that no pregnant mama should go through this time alone. Solitude, I think, should not just be part of the equation during pregnancy. But I was determined to get my lab work done. So I was putting up with that. And after first trimester finished, I started to feel better. I had less nausea, less migraines, was getting a little bit more. I really loved actually how my body was evolving. I loved my belly. I had this big mirror in my studio, and every day I spent time, like with her and just witnessing this miraculous thing that is the female body, shifting and evolving very subtly and like very abruptly at times. And it was a very beautiful experience. And then the second trimester came, and I reached about 20 weeks. I had my mid-pregnancy scan, and I really insisted for my partner to be there at this time. And so he,
any
sorry.
of the I was just going to say, has he been to any of the scans that you'd had prior to that?
Yeah, he was there during my first scan, and then we separated. And I only did like the one at 5 weeks, and then I wanted to double check because this doctor dismissed me really abruptly, and I was panicking. And then I did again at 20 weeks.
Yeah.
And this time I was like, you have to be here. I don't want to go through this alone. And I am really grateful that I insisted for him to be there, because this is where things got, where things changed. I remember it was the 5th of July. This is when I went to take the mid-pregnancy scan. I was around 20 weeks, and I did it in the Chiang Mai University Hospital, so it's like a public hospital. And we were still in the, actually COVID hit Thailand a little bit later compared to the rest. So 2021 was when actually most of the pandemic actually really took a toll on Thailand. And so the hospitals, were still like full COVID restrictions. You needed to get tested and all the things. So I remember this morning I went in for my appointment. The hospital was so overcrowded. It was super overwhelming. And I had to wait for hours, to the point where at some point I was like, I really need to eat. Like, I can no longer wait. So we left. We went to this really nice place to get a smoothie bowl and a juice. And then I was like, okay, now I feel like back. I'm like grounded. Let's go back, and hopefully they will see us soon. And we went back, waited a little bit longer. Then because of COVID, only patients could could go into the rooms, no visitors, no support system. And it was like this really big room with loads of beds. and loads of ultrasound machines, and all divided by a curtain. And that in itself was a little bit overwhelming, but I was like, okay, this is what it is. Let's go. And I remember that I was laying there and the doctor started doing the ultrasound, and she was narrating to me. She told me like, okay, I'll have a look and then I'll start narrating to you what I am seeing. And so I was like, okay, sounds good. And she started talking to me, and then she stopped. And she turned the monitor around so that I could no longer see the monitor. And I will never forget like how drastically the look on her face changed. And she just kind of froze. She left. She's like, I will come back. And I was like, oh la la, what's going on? And then she came back with another doctor, and they started speaking in Thai. And I was like, what's going on? Please tell me. And they started like checking her and going a little bit like doing more, just like looking more at the ultrasound. And then they called my partner in, which they had denied me his presence up until 15 minutes before because of COVID restrictions. And when they actually allowed him in, I understood that there was something really wrong, because so then they asked me to get dressed, and they brought me to another place within the maternity ward. And this was like a private room sort of, with a more modern ultrasound machine. And they asked me to wait there. And there I was again alone. They didn't let him in. And I was there. I waited for a little while until the professor, like the head professor and the head of department, came. And they started looking again. And I remember the professor came, and then other doctors came, and the students came. And I was like, okay, I am not a medical doctor, but I've been working within, the realm of medicine, and I have done a lot of ultrasounds, mostly in the field. And I know when I could see that look on their face, when there's a really fascinating medical case. And I was like, okay, I never thought, that I was going to be on the other side of this. Like, I've been that really excited medical student, or like student being like, okay, what's going on here, and being on the other side was really frightening, actually. They spent hours looking at the ultrasound, and I knew it had something to do with her heart, but it took them a long time before they actually gave me the details of what they were seeing. And I was really impatient during that time, but I also appreciated that they really took their time before they delivered the news that they ended up delivering, because once you say certain things, you cannot really go back, and if you're not sure, then let's not say it. But yeah, after a couple of hours, and a lot of students, a lot of doctors looking at my ultrasound, the professor told me that she suspected Naomi, the baby girl, being affected by hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which is a congenital heart defect that is pretty serious. It can manifest, to different severities and different extents. And the one that she carried was very, very extreme. So basically, in this condition, the left part of the heart is very significantly underdeveloped, and her left heart was almost entirely missing. As long as the baby is in the womb, she's connected to the umbilical cord, and so she can grow, and the heart can keep beating. She had a really strong heartbeat, which I find so fascinating, that with only half of her heart, she could maintain such a healthy heartbeat. But the problem, of course, manifests once she's born, and yeah, things change in the circulatory system. And if you don't have the left heart, how are you going to push, the blood into the systemic circulation and everything? The professor told me, like, you have two options. If you manage to bring her to term, it's already a miracle, because of course, the more the baby grows, the more hard it becomes if the left heart is missing. But you can bring on, like, you can continue the pregnancy. And as soon as she's born, she's gonna have to be put on prostaglandins, like a type of medication which will keep her ducts open. And then she will need immediate heart surgery and basically live a life in the hospital. If she survives any of the surgeries that she would have to go through, they're very complicated surgeries. Eventually, she would have needed a heart transplant, which is already hard to come by in adults, and it's even more challenging in newborns. And, there was the potential for multiple organ failure at any point, at any stage. Potentially, she could have just died within the first hours, no matter what was going to happen, in terms of medical interventions. When I heard those things, I could really not believe that this was happening. And at the same time, like, the doctor told me, like, you have 1 week to make your choice, because after that, we're going to be legally obligated to resuscitate if she's born prematurely, or if you bring her to term. Like, if she's born beyond the 22-23 weeks mark, we have to legally resuscitate. We're legally obligated to resuscitate. So if you want to terminate your pregnancy, you have 1 week. And I was like, what? Like, to be honest, the choice I made was very instant. Like, when I heard all those things, all those complications, I knew that this was not the life that I wanted for my daughter. I imagined, this beautiful home, water birth, and to live in the mountains, and to live on the island, and to carry on with my PhD and what I was so passionate about. And she would have needed to be stuck to a machine, like in a coma, to keep her stable, always waiting for the next surgery or for the next thing to go wrong. And this was not life for me. This was not life. It felt really clear that this body that she was given was not meant to be earthside. Her spirit, I felt her so strongly, that her spirit and her soul was perfect. There was absolutely nothing wrong with her. It was just the vehicle, the vessel was not meant to be here. And so my decision was quite fast. I didn't need a week to take my decision. I needed way more than a week to actually understand and accept what was going to happen. And I was nowhere ready to give birth. I mean, I knew how I wanted to give birth, but I had not started preparing to give birth at all. So I remember leaving the hospital and just being so shocked that I could not even react. I was like frozen. But I knew that I had 1 week, so I had to get, I could not stay frozen. I needed to prepare myself logistically and all the things. And I knew I could not give birth in the hospital where I was diagnosed, because it was a public hospital, and how women were giving birth there was like, there is a long corridor, kind of similar, to the ultrasound. There is a big room with loads of beds divided by curtains. And if I had given birth there, I would have been alone. Because of COVID, I could have had no visitors, no one there with me. And it just felt, no, this can't be it, like, I mean, already the fact that I had to give birth in a hospital was like a nightmare. And then the fact that I would have to give birth in a corridor full of pregnant women in labor, it just did not feel right, with no one there to support me. It was
Yeah.
just like, no, I can't do this.
Well,
Uh,
also, I imagine, like having to make the decision to have a termination for medical reasons at 20 weeks and then being told that your only option is to birth around a lot of women that are giving birth at full term to babies that are going to survive, most likely, and that you're going to be lumped amongst them, knowing that your daughter's about to pass away in your arms. That's like, I mean, of course, like that's not even a decision that I feel like anyone should have to make for themselves. And I'm glad that you knew that within your internal compass that you couldn't do that. And yeah, globally it seems like this is a thing where they're kind of putting women who know that they're having a termination or an abortion into these maternity suites or these maternity wards with women that are having these like more positive experiences, and it does not feel fair in any capacity.
no, it does not feel fair. And I feel like, in that case, they might have not just had a different solution for me, like that's all they could offer, and that was just not right for me. And I, insurance does not cover termination. Even if it's for medical reason. I mean, at least my insurance, my insurance didn't cover maternity at all. And I was, I felt really, really, really blessed and grateful that my partner's mom stepped in, and she offered to cover the expenses for me to give birth in a private hospital, in a private room, where he could be present with me. And that was really a blessing, because as a PhD student, definitely in Thailand, we did not make a lot. I didn't make a lot of money, and I was like, oh, this is going to be very challenging. Giving birth in a private hospital is not cheap. Nothing is cheap in a private hospital. But so we explored a few options, and I found a private hospital, Chiang Mai Ram. I went in to do another ultrasound, because they needed proof, or their own proof, to be able to schedule me in for a termination. So I did another ultrasound. They kind of confirmed the diagnosis. But in between, in this week, I went back to the mountains. And I went to see some of my sisters, and they organized a little like blessing way, like a baby shower sort of thing for me, which was exactly what I needed, just to be held in other women's arms and feel their warmth and feel their love. I think that was probably the best thing that happened between the diagnosis and, me having to go to hospital. It was a new moon as well, which felt really meaningful. And sort of like, death and rebirth archetype energy. I felt really blessed to have this opportunity to go back to the mountains. And then on the 13th of July, so about a week later from when I got the diagnosis, I went to the hospital in Chiang Mai, and I got admitted into this private room. I tried to make it as pleasant as I could, brought all my crystals and Tibetan bowls and aromatherapy and my yoga bowl and all the things. It was a nightmare, to be fair. It was horrible. The most horrible part was the medications that they were giving me to induce labor. My body was carrying a very healthy pregnancy. And what my mind was starting to grasp, my body could not grasp. They certainly after they admitted me, they started giving me this sublingual medication every 2 hours. I was taking it, and no one took a moment to tell me what the side effects of these medications would be, what those, okay, I'm admitted, I'm going to start taking this medication to induce labor, what's going to happen? No one said anything to me, and I thought that was just so unbelievable. I saw the doctor for maybe like 10 minutes during the whole time I was in the hospital, and otherwise I was cared for by the nurses, which were lovely, but yet they didn't really give me much context of what was going to unfold. But basically every time I took this medication has crazy side effects. And every time, almost as soon as I put it under my tongue, the side effects would kick in, and my teeth were like, I don't know how this is called in English.
Chattering.
Yeah, we're chattering like uncontrollably. I had no control over them. My whole body was going into full shiver. My temperature dropped. I was puking. I was having diarrhea, and it was just the worst thing ever. And I was just like, how am I supposed to give birth in these conditions? Like, whenever I could just lay in bed, I was like in a fetal position myself, trying to keep my body warm and trying to just, have some sort of control over my body, because the shivers and the chattering were just like uncontrollable. And yeah, every 2 hours, this was the process. And I I don't know, I started to become so dissociated during this process. The side effects completely took over, and I really lost a lot of, I felt sovereign when I went into that hospital. And as soon as all these side effects started, I was like, this is my worst nightmare. Like, what is happening to me? My cervix was not dilating at all because there was so much tension in my body. And I was refusing pain medications because I was like, I cannot be more dissociated than this. Like, I want to be somewhat present when I'm actually going to give birth. But I was in this state for about 18 hours where I just could no longer take it. I could no longer take it. I had like 3 little stoves in my room. I had like so many blankets. I was so cold. And I mean, I was in Thailand in July. It's hot and humid, but it's hot. Everyone was like taking their clothes off around me, and I was like freezing, and really, really a lot of tension. And so at 18 hours, I decided to take a shot of morphine because I could no longer handle it. And this was actually a really, really good decision, because as the morphine started to kick in, my body slowly started to relax. It was kind of counteracting the side effects of the medication, and slowly my cervix started to dilate. And I actually started feeling I was entering like the birthing process. My body took over. My mind was like really like all over the place, but I started to feel this almost like really primitive, like primal force, like coming forth in my body. And I remember taking probably the deepest breaths that I've ever taken in my life, and starting to really know from a very embodied place that my body was designed for this. My body knew exactly how to give birth, and I just had to keep my mind kind of like still, somewhat still, and my body knew exactly what to do. And maybe a couple of hours after the morphine, my waters broke. And after 4 or 5 hours that my water broke, Naomi was born. And the contractions were just, the pain, I think the morphine had started to kind of like lift because the pain became so unbearable. And I remember thinking, like, how does any woman choose to give birth more than once? I mean, the first time you don't know, but once you know, how do you put yourself through this again? Like, I remember trying to walk and I was like split in half, like I could not stand straight. And this pain was so intense. And then as the contractions started to become more consistent, and then, she was a 22 weeks old baby, so she was relatively small, fully formed, pretty long legs. I was very surprised, but she was relatively small. So once the body opened, it did not take too long to actually give birth. And I remember this instant shift between this unbearable amount of pain that I could not even start to comprehend. And then the moment she was born, it's like I have never felt pain in my life. And it was just this like overwhelming amount of love and bliss. And it was, I still cannot like really understand, like from a more like logical perspective, but the shift between the pain and the bliss was something so profound. And I understood, like, oh, this is why women do it again and again. Like, now it makes sense. She was born, and after a little bit, my placenta was born. Like, I birthed the placenta, and I remember being in such awe at the beauty of this incredibly miraculous organ that the female body is able to create. I remember, like, Naomi her father took her for a moment while I was birthing the placenta, and I was just like, please leave this here. Like, don't take it away from me. I want to stay with the child as much as I want to stay with the placenta. And I actually never, for me, I don't know if it was the whole overwhelm of the birthing, but her father said that her heart was still beating when he took her in her arms. When I took her in my arms, I knew she was already passed. She was so small and so purple. Actually, she was very purple, and the skin is still very translucent at that time of gestation. And we stayed with her for a couple of hours. Maybe now I know that I could have advocated for more time. To be honest, I didn't know anything during, like, no one really informed me about what my rights were. And in the all overwhelm of the situation, I didn't ask. Also, it's somewhat my responsibility as well. But we spent, I feel like, about 2 hours with her. It was a very beautiful time. We did Reiki, we played the sound bowls for her. We just kept her really, really close. And after that, the nurses came and they took her away. And the one thing that I made sure of was that they were not gonna touch her. They were not gonna do any sort of medical, no autopsies, like no testing. Like, I did not want her to be touched. Yeah. I didn't want her to be touched. by anyone. And I made sure that I could have her body back. I needed to wait for the documents from the hospital. I could not take her with me straight away, but the one thing that I did make sure of was don't touch her, and I'm going to come back and take her body. I went home the same day. I could no longer bear to stay in the hospital. So I just packed my things a few hours after giving birth. I mean, after a few hours, maybe after they took her away, because they had to just, check my pressure and all the things. And I went home. And then the next kind of chapter started where I had to figure out, I had to find a temple where I could bring her to. And the whole language barrier was a little bit challenging in that situation. Also, I couldn't really think straight very much. But some people in the community helped out. They made a few phone calls for me, which I really appreciated. And on the 7th, so she was born on the 14th of July, after 26 hours of long, I mean, I don't know if I can call it labor, because the first 20 hours were like the induction of labor, but after this very long experience. And then on the 17th of July, I went to take her. The documents were ready, and maybe there was two moments during that day that I will never forget, and that were so raw and very raw. And the first one was witnessing her being taken out of a freezer. That was something that was just like unbearable for my eyes and for my heart. They gave her to me like wrapped in this sort of like paper. I don't know what it was, but she was all wrapped up and frozen, which was super intense to witness and to experience. And I brought her home. I did this very beautiful ritual with her. I very much believe in the elemental nature of reality and how we come from the elements and we return to the elements. And so I brought her home and I did this small ritual. I didn't have so much time because I had to bring her to the temple, but we moved through the four elements, and this gave me so much peace to be able to go through. I didn't have much of a choice on how I gave birth, but I had a choice and I had sovereignty in what happened after birth. And that meant so much. And in a way, I felt really grateful that I was in Thailand for that, in a Buddhist country that is a little bit more close to the elemental nature of reality compared to if I had been in Italy, and also Thailand being Thailand, you have a little bit more freedom to do things your way. And that was so, so important for me. And I did this ritual with her, and then I had bought her this really beautiful white bamboo linen sheet that I wanted to wrap her in when she was born, after my home birth that never happened. But it felt right to use this for her funeral, for her passing, for her return. And so I wrapped her up in this beautiful like bamboo linens, and then we drove to the hospital. I was wearing this dress actually, this white dress. We're all white, me and her. And we brought her to the cremation. She was cremated, and I placed her in the oven, in the furnace, and then her dad lit the fire.
Wow.
And I mean, it was just a button to press. The monk asked us to do it, and I didn't have the strength to do it, so he did it. I don't even know if it was a question for me to do it, to be honest. I don't remember, but I just know I couldn't have done it. And so he did it, and that was the second moment during that day that was so incredibly challenging for my heart to hold. In like less than a split second, her entire body was embraced by fire. And that also meant a lot, because in my beliefs, fire is the most purifying element of all. And for her to go through the fire on her return home to spirit was just the right thing. And after a day or so, we went back to collect her ashes, and the monks placed them in this really beautiful, like, mother pearl vase, and then they put the mother pearl vase in a bigger, like, terracotta pot, and full of roses. And we brought her home. She stayed with me for a couple of weeks. And then on the 4th of August, which is my birthday, I returned to the mountains, and I brought her to the river, a very dear river to my heart. It was before, and it's definitely after that moment. And I returned her ashes to the waters. And that day I spent almost the whole day sitting by a bamboo hut by the river, communing with some really powerful mushrooms, and just feeling her returning to the spirit realm and feeling her essence all around me, within me. And yeah, it was it was just the right way for me to honor her. And I feel really grateful that I could do it my way. And then I think the chapter after that was really the most challenging one, the grieving part. I decided to return home to Italy after that, because I thought it was going to be a good idea to be with family. And I don't regret it, but it was way more challenging than I expected, because the truth was that most people are not equipped to deal with grief and death, and especially of a newborn, and especially when you live on the other side of the world and they never saw her, they never felt her, they just knew that she was there, but they never had an experience of her. I was the only one that had an experience of her, and it was so challenging for anyone to relate or to dare to ask me anything. So I met a lot of avoidance. I met a lot of fear. It was a taboo. I mean, unfortunately, death is a taboo in most of our world, and most people, it's not their fault, but they don't necessarily have the necessary skills to talk about death, or to help someone process death. And I felt like my grief was invisible, that no one else could really relate to my experience. And that was maybe one of the most painful parts, because I felt so alone. I felt alone during pregnancy, but I was not alone because I was with her. But once she was gone, I was so alone. And logistically, and practically, yes, the family helped for, in some ways, but emotionally, they were not able to help. And my partner was not able to help so much emotionally as well. So yeah, that was pretty. It was a very dark chapter, and by dark, I don't necessarily mean negative, but I mean that it was like devoid. It was like a black hole of never-ending, spiraling grief. It was probably the biggest reset moment that I have experienced so far in my life. It was a moment where I could no longer deny the loud voices coming from my womb and the loud voices that my body was, speaking to me. Like the language of the body became so loud. I had to kind of withdraw from the world for a while. And I maybe wish that I had withdrawn for a little while longer. But I had to, to get back to take care of myself and to support myself. So, but the grief, I don't think it's ever going to go in some ways, and maybe I don't want it to go in other ways. I've encountered death many times in my life, but this was definitely the most significant and profound experience that I've had with death so far. And since I was pretty young, I understood that death is the biggest portal to life and to living. And this experience really taught me how grief is one of the most powerful gifts if we let it be. So it's this spiraling void that brings us back to love, brings us back to what really matters, helps us to walk home, back to ourselves, back to our center. And it is such a powerful gift. And I am so grateful for what you have created with this podcast, because we need to, these experiences cannot stay unspoken. This grief should not be invisible. And I feel like as a collective, if we want to move towards a new earth, or a more conscious way of relating to each others, we need to learn how to deal with death. We cannot pretend that we're all immortal, like we're not. It's maybe the only certainty that we have once we come earthside is that one day we're going to leave, and that we don't know when. We need to learn how to honor these processes, honor these transitions.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for telling your story. Yeah. Just every time I listen to the story, I'm always like, okay, I don't know how to follow up with a question or say anything, because I just want to leave space for what you've been through and allow you to be seen, because you're not alone, and you're so not alone, and you were never alone. You just didn't have the awareness that I didn't have, that so many of us didn't have, that there are others out there who are going through this and that are desperate to connect and desperate to feel like they aren't carrying these stories alone, and that there are people that understand the grief that they're walking. And yeah, I'm honored to help these stories be heard, and for women to connect through their, similarities within the journey of motherhood, because birthing death is not easy. It's not easy by any means. And so much of what we see within the maternal space is, you know, happy babies or crying babies or colicky babies. And I'm like, what about the babies who stopped breathing or the babies who weren't, you know, suitable, who didn't have a heart that was going to survive, like your Naomi and my Dash? Like, these conversations need to be had so that mothers can feel less alone. And yeah, I'm really grateful for you sharing, because I'm sure there are so many mums who will relate to your story and feel that pain with you, and you with them as well.
Yeah, I feel like because no one likes to talk about it, it feels like it's something that happens so rarely, but it's absolutely not. It is happening way more than we think it is. I also feel like in my journey, and maybe something that my soul knew since the very moment I received my diagnosis, that took me years to actually then grasp and download back into the body, is that if a baby is meant to be earthside, they will be earthside, no matter what the circumstances of pregnancy and birth are. I've witnessed and heard stories of women who were in such, worse places than me in terms of, their pregnancy and their birth, and their baby were absolutely healthy. And so this taught me that some souls, they come here for a very short time, and they're here to teach us lessons that are beyond what life on earth can teach us. There is something incredibly powerful in giving birth to a spirit baby, in a way, let's say. And I am so grateful for Naomi. I never wished that this didn't happen to me, in a way. I mean, I wished things went differently, sure, but I have so much gratitude for the lessons that she came here to teach me. And I feel like the more we can talk about it, the more we can also download and bring those lessons forth. Avoidance is not going to help anyone to truly learn and honor the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right.
Very special souls. Very special souls.
What is your connection like with Naomi now?
I feel her a lot in nature. When I'm in nature, I'm reminded of her. I feel her a lot in my heart. And from a more scientific point of view, we know that the baby's cells, they stay within the mother's body for years and maybe decades, maybe forever, who knows. And when I connect to this knowing, I can really feel her presence within me. And sometimes I just hear this like voice, that calls me mama, and I know it's her. And this like whisper. I'm so grateful. I feel like I still have a lot to learn from her. I feel like she's guiding me in many ways. I never dreamt of her again. I never really, I work a lot with plant medicine, and I asked many times to meet her, and I never got to meet her in the human form, but I feel her presence on a more spiritual, like spirit level. She's always with me.
That's beautiful. I'm actually curious about what drew you to the name Naomi.
So Naomi in Japanese means honest truth or true beauty. I didn't have a name yet when I received the diagnosis, and I kind of panicked, to be honest. I was like, I want her to have a name before she's born. And so we spent some time with her father to feel into what was coming. And actually Naomi was his choice. And I remember that when he landed on that choice, it just felt so right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful name. It is. And I'm wondering what ended up happening with your placenta, because you shared that you wanted to also spend some time with your placenta, but were they able to give that back to you or not?
No. I never saw it again. They took it away, and because of the induction process, they told me that it was compromised to some extent. I don't really know. But I couldn't. I wanted to keep it. I wanted to maybe eat it, to process it, but that was not possible. But something that I did that also I didn't expect, the day after she was born, I started producing breast milk. And this was actually probably the time when my body started like started processing what was actually happening, because my mind had tried to process it already for the week, but my body was like, whoa, where is the baby, like I'm ready, like where is the baby? And yeah, I mean, of course you're going to start producing breast milk, but that's not something that I even really thought of before birth. Like, I don't know, I was so naive in so many ways, but I remember that my breast started to get very swollen, and I went out to buy a pump, and I had to pump enough to not get mastitis, like the infection of the gland ducts, but also not too much to keep producing milk. So there was like, I had to look for this fine balance, and I was, wow, like I was in awe once again, at the miracle of this body. And it's like, what do I do with this colostrum? What do I do with this milk? So I started taking it, I started drinking it myself. And I remember that I had quite a bit, and I took some bee wax, some organic bee wax, some vitamin E, and some coconut oil, and I made a balm. And then I started using this balm to massage my breast, to massage my womb, trying to, reduce the swelling, reduce the inflammation, and just give it back to my body. And that helped a lot. I remember my doctor's like, oh, you can take this medication. So I'm like, no, I am no longer willing to take any medications. I don't want to stop my milk. It's really important for my body to go through this process, because this is how my body is going to catch up to reality, and so in that way, I was grateful that I could just, again, like stand for what was true to me and not get too, yeah, not let the medical profession that doesn't always, have the best or most holistic ways of seeing the body and treating the body, let overtake that. In my naivety, I could keep my sovereignty in some ways, which I'm really grateful for.
I just have to say, like, I say it often within my own story, that feeling of naivety, and I relate so much. But I think what I'm also coming to realize is that so much of it is not naivety, and a lot of it is just not being aware because no one's educated us. And so whilst it feels like naivety in the body, or maybe externally we're feeling that, like, I know externally that I feel a lot of people are maybe looking at me being like, she's so naive, or she's so dumb, or whatever it is. And I truly believe like we need to be more graceful and soft with ourselves, because even I didn't know that. And it makes sense. It makes so much sense. But I had not thought that at 20 to 22 weeks, that if you gave birth that early, that you would produce milk, because I don't think I even had colostrum myself coming in at 20 weeks. But I am also very aware that when you give birth, there's a natural hormone release that takes place when the placenta and the baby are born. And that is what spurs the milk production on. So of course that would take place for you. But no one is going to explain that to you at 20 weeks. No one's going to say that and be like, this is what's going to happen to you. And no one even explained that to me. No one addressed that to me with a full-term baby. So I don't think it's fair on yourself to feel naivety around that, because it wasn't. It was just you did what you did with the information that you had available, and no one gave you any other awareness around it.
Yeah, that is true. And I feel like softness is definitely a big topic in a big element of the the grieving journey and like the loss journey. I tend to be quite stubborn and quite harsh. And in some ways it's been a gift, because it has led me, to move forward on my path in my own ways and carve my own path. But on this journey, softness has been challenging, and forgiveness has also been very challenging. Forgiving myself for abandoning myself in certain ways, for not standing up to my truth during the first months of pregnancy, for putting myself through all this stress. Yeah, it's still a journey, to be honest. I feel like the self-forgiveness and the like radical acceptance is still where I am at, like in the grieving process. Like I know now better than I did then that I did my best with what I had, and still there are some parts that are really struggling to forgive the self.
Yeah. And I know that's a massive journey. And I'm really honoring that journey. And I'm really inviting you to open to that forgiveness. And it's not easy. I know it's not.
Yeah, I feel like her guidance, from above, from all around, is probably the greatest drive to that forgiveness. So I always felt like I was seeking her forgiveness in some ways, and the message that always came is like, there is no forgiveness to be had on her side. It's all self-forgiveness. She's always been perfect, and her soul has always been perfect. And maybe this is exactly what had to happen. Like, I never found myself asking the question why. Like, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? But grasping the why, I mean, grasping the lessons beyond the what happened is a long journey. Maybe it's a lifetime journey. Yeah.
I am wondering if you would choose to birth again. Have you thought about how you'd like that to look?
Yeah, I have thought about it. and I can't wait to birth again. I really feel like the path of motherhood is part of my journey on this earth in this lifetime. And while I am a mother, I would love to be a mother again. And I have set some conditions for myself before this can happen again. And the main one is to really feel safe and grounded in my partnership. So until that happens, another birth is not, it's just not on the plan, in the plan. I feel like that things didn't work out with Naomi's father. We did birth a business together after, and I'm very grateful for that. And that taught me a lot. But I know now I better than what I knew before, of the kind of partnership that I want for myself before I can bring another baby onto this earth. And once that is there, I feel like I will take a more natural approach to pregnancy. I might still, do some of the ultrasounds and maybe the chromosomal testing, because I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of fear in being pregnant again and, not knowing what can happen. But I want to trust myself more. And I think this whole grieving journey and this time between Naomi and, the next birth is really a journey to learn how to trust myself and how to trust my body. And once that is when it's going to happen again, I am going to I feel like take a more natural approach. And I'm still wanting to birth at home in the water or outside of the water, who knows, but like definitely at home, supported, of course. I feel like the partnership and the community around me are going to be two very, very fundamental elements in being able to go through another pregnancy, not necessarily, without fear, but be having the tools and to handle that fear, to move through that fear and to trust to trust the process, to trust the journey.
Yeah. And it is, it's going to be one of the biggest things I'm sure anyone faces after loss is going through pregnancy and birth again. But as long as you have that community and that foundational partner, I know that you're going to have a really beautiful birth next time. And you've got Naomi there, making sure that you're safe and that her sibling is safe too.
Yes, I trust that. I trust that very much.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. Was there anything else that you'd like to share before we close out?
I'd like to invite myself and all the other mamas that go through this journey to really trust and open to the journey of grief, because it is a very powerful gift.
Thank you. And where can people connect with you if they'd like to reach out?
So I have my Instagram, Alchemy by Diama, where I'm sharing some of my medicine, and actually soon one of the great teachings I said before, like during the grieving, like just after birth and during the grieving, I could no longer ignore the voice of my womb. And I took this as this reset time, and I started my cyclical kind of living journey after birth. And I knew that that was my way to one day share the medicine of this journey with other women. And so after 3 years now, it feels like I am ready to birth this cyclical living for others. And yeah, I'm working on it. I hope it's gonna be ready for summer solstice. But I'm going to be sharing this journey, sharing like cyclical living journey, blending science and spirit, which is what I'm most obsessed about and passionate about, merging these two realms and just helping women to reconnect to the voice of their womb and their cyclical essence. So once we start to live from this more embodied, sovereign space, awareness and the journey through womanhood, through motherhood, is very different and is so much more grounded. So I'm really happy to share that soon.
Thank you, love. Well, I'll pop your Instagram in the show notes so people can connect with you and yeah, get a sneak peek into what you're doing. And yeah, will you post on your page about when you're going to be releasing that?
Yes, I already started on what was it? Spring equinox. I started like planting the seeds.
Perfect.
And yes, slowly. I am like the womb and shroom lady, basically.
The women's room, that's great. Oh, thank you so much. I'm
Thank
really,
you.
really grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the medicine that you're sharing.
My pleasure.